Hi guys, so today's video is going to be part 1 of 3 where I compare my reading taste to that of the general reader population. The other 2 videos I'm going to be doing will be books that I enjoy that a lot of other people do not seem to enjoy based off of the average Goodreads rating or things that I've seen discussed here on BookTube, Bookstagram, that sort of thing. One of them is going to be my basic bookish opinions, which is where I seem to line up with everybody else and thinking that something is just okay or that something is really exceptional. But today I'm going to be focusing on, I'm going to start on the negative and then slowly get to maybe more positive, where I'm going to start with books that I see have a very high rating on Goodreads, but that I personally am not the biggest fan of. In order for books to be on this list, they had to have above a 4.25 rating. These are truly books that it seems like so many other people absolutely adore and they just don't click for me. I'm going to start with one that I feel like is going to ruin your childhood and say that I was not a huge fan of Percy Jackson. I definitely think this is one of those it's not you, it's me situations. I'm quite picky when it comes to middle grade books, and I think that was just the case with this one. I do enjoy young adult books, and sometimes I really enjoy young adult books that are very young in tone, but this one being middle grade I think just kind of hit especially young for me. And while I do think you can, of course, go into this as an adult and enjoy it, I just personally didn't really, and also I didn't have the nostalgia factor. And I've seen the way people talk about Percy Jackson, how it's one of the most wonderful book series, and I'm so glad so many people love it. I'm so glad that it is a series that now bookworms who have kids can show that to their kids. I think that's so sweet, but just wasn't the book for me. Next up is one that I feel like everybody loves, and I couldn't stand it, and a lot of you have heard me mention this before, but that would be Mistborn's Secret History. So I love the original Mistborn trilogy. The second series is, I enjoy it well enough. It's not an absolute favorite or anything, but they're fun. But I did not like Secret History. So if you don't know, Mistborn, there's the original trilogy, and then chronologically, the second series, which is kind of referred to as Mistborn Era 2, it takes place roughly 300 years after the events of the first trilogy. Mistborn Secret History, it's a little bit up for debate as to when you should read it, but most people feel like you should read it after a certain point in the second series. And it kind of sheds light on some events from the first series, but from a different point of view. And I very much didn't like it. I didn't like the additional scenes that we got. I do like some of the information that is provided for the greater Cosmere. Most of you, I'm sure, already know, but the Cosmere is Sanderson's shared universe for his stories. So it gives you insight into that, which is exciting, but the way that we went about getting that information, I didn't like it. And Secret History has a 4.37 average rating. It's one of the highest ratings, and I'm glad so many people enjoy it. It's just not for me. Next up would be Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. So I'm not unpopular in enjoying this series. This is a very well-loved series. Six of Crows has a 4.46 average rating. That is so extremely high, which is fantastic for Leigh Bardugo. I'm very happy that so many people love it. I'm glad so many people are getting into it now the Netflix show is out. And I like the book, so I'm not upset that the rating is so high. I guess what my unpopular opinion is, though, is how much higher the Six of Crows average rating is from the Shadow and Bone rating, which when I checked is currently sitting at 3.97. So I guess my unpopular opinion really is just that I don't think Six of Crows is that much better than Shadow and Bone. Shadow and Bone is a little bit more basic. It is kind of starter fantasy. It's got a lot of the YA fantasy tropes in it. Absolutely, I would say the characters are also not nearly as complex. But on the other hand, I also think that that kind of serves a purpose, because if you're an older reader reading Shadow and Bone, then of course those tropes are familiar to you. You've seen them time and time again. But if you're a newer reader and you're kind of coming out of middle grade into YA, it's a great starter YA fantasy, and then Six of Crows can kind of age up with its readers where it gets more mature as the readers get older. And I think that's fine. It's just, I don't know that I think 4.46 versus 3.97. I just think they should be a little bit closer to each other. Next up would be Rage of Dragons. This is a book that has a 4.35 average rating. Again, very, very high. And while there are certain themes that I did get a lot of enjoyment from that I think are very important, and I think that those themes were executed quite well. So if you're wondering what those themes are, it's like there's this society that's built off of these different classes, our main character being a part of one of the lower classes, and he's very mistreated as a result. So there's a lot of themes about that. There's also a lot to do with essentially PTSD and the self-harm that is caused in trying to pursue a goal that society sort of rewards you for, because it is a very military-based society, and so violence and this anger that this character is feeling is sort of reinforced by the way in which society sees him as a hero for excelling in those things. I thought all of that was explored extremely well, but could not stand the main character. I think his personality is basically revenge, and revenge stories have the potential to be so extremely satisfying, but I just found the beginning of the book, I wanted to see more of what was important to the character that led him to want to get revenge, because I do think that we don't dive into that as much. It's a sad situation, very much indeed, but I also just wish we could have seen more of the relationships that the character had that led him on this path. And I also just wanted him to make smarter decisions. He's constantly putting other people in danger. Also, the book is just very action-packed, which should hopefully be very appealing, and it obviously is, because it has a very extremely high average rating. So I just find that the constant action and leveling up takes up such a large portion of the book, and I wanted to examine more of this character, what they're going through in their emotions, and more complex emotions. I wanted to dive into those because I do think we see kind of part of it, but I wanted to dive deeper. Next up, we have Queen of Nothing. This is the third book in the Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. The first one being Cruel Prince. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. It's a fae story with a human girl living among the fae, and they very much mistreat her. She has the ability to lie, and that is the strength that she really tries to take advantage of in her way of existing within the fae world. So I really liked the scheming that took place in book 2. I thought that was very well done. And then in book 3, I wasn't the biggest fan of the ending. I thought it was a tad underwhelming. And I thought a lot of other people thought so too, but apparently not, because the second and the third one had the same exact average rating. They were both 4.34. I was a little astounded. I'm not saying objectively that it was lesser and that everybody should agree with me. I just thought more people did. So when I was looking at the average rating, I was like, what? Because I thought so many people disliked it. So for those of you who loved the trilogy ending, seeing its praises, I was really shocked. It was fine. It was fine. It wasn't what I wanted to have happen. I thought it was a little too short. I wanted to see more scheming. I just wanted to see more things go down. And I actually wanted it to be elongated a little, which is the opposite of a lot of fantasy books. There's a lot of fantasy books I feel can be cut. But yeah, I was really shocked. Basically, I'm like, wow, more people didn't agree with me? Next up, we have Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. This is another third book in a trilogy. It has a 4.28 average rating, and I thought that the end of the trilogy was just okay. Once again, the second book in the trilogy is actually my favorite one. Most people feel that Joe Abercrombie excels in his character work, but that his books are rather meandering and kind of plotless, and so as a result, it takes a while to get into. I agree with that statement. I do think it takes a while to get into the first one, which is why I liked the second one so much more, because I knew the characters, I enjoyed following them, and I kind of accepted, okay, this is probably not going to really go anywhere, but that's not really the point. And I was cool with that. And then the third book, it so much didn't really go anywhere that I was like, really though? Like, I was hoping. And I do think part of it is that so many people, I was kind of shocked by this, because by the time I finished the trilogy, I was like, no, but I guess if you feel that way, that's okay. But when I would talk about the books in the first two, I would say there's not really a super strong plot. It's not very plot driven. And people would always correct me and say, it is plot driven, you just don't know it yet. And then I read the third book waiting for this master plot, waiting to see how everything connected and how all these threads came together. And then I got to the end of it and I was like, they don't. And I feel like that's kind of the point. It's sort of more realistic that way, which a lot of people, I think, really feel it's kind of genius. It subverts a lot of your typical fantasy tropes, which is cool in its own way, but also it's a little lackluster. It's a little underwhelming, and that's fine. I think like my This is where the basic side comes in for the future video, but I do like my series endings to go out with a little more of a bang than this one did. This one was kind of like, I'm done now. So I'm kind of surprised that it has that high of an average rating. I didn't realize so many people love the end, because a lot of my friends that I've spoken to, they also kind of seem to feel somewhat similarly. Still though, I still enjoy the series as a whole, but I was just really quite surprised that last one was up so high. Next up, we have From Blood and Ash. This one's average rating is 4.31. So a couple of things with this. I thought this book was, I'm not trying to be insulting here, but it's kind of like popcorn fantasy in that it's very entertaining. It makes me think of going to the movies. You got your drink, you got your candy, you got your snacks, and you're gonna watch this movie and you're just gonna be entertained, and then you're gonna have a good time. And that's sort of how I feel that this book goes about. And it also is compared a lot to A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I apologize, I don't recall the exact average rating. I believe it's like 4.09 or something for ACOTAR, but it seems like a lot of people felt that From Blood and Ash is like a similar type of feel to ACOTAR, and I thought more people liked ACOTAR, but I suppose not. It's possible too that just so many people have read ACOTAR that it's bound to get some people that don't really like it. A lot of people hate read ACOTAR because it's very popular. I know, for example, my friend Alan, he lost a challenge and therefore had to read ACOTAR when we all knew he was gonna hate it. So I can see why maybe ACOTAR is lower, but I guess I just expected ACOTAR to be higher, because while I think a lot of people don't go into those books hoping for this stunning writing style necessarily, I think it's the romance and the tension that kind of pull them in. I still kind of think that the writing in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series is stronger. So I guess I'm surprised that it's such a high rating. I just feel like all the people that would really trash on From Blood and Ash haven't found it yet. Not saying that they should find it and tear it apart. I just think it hasn't become the joke that ACOTAR has become. So I guess what I'm saying is, I suppose I have the unpopular opinion of thinking the average rating should be a little closer together for those two. Next up, we have another Sanderson novella, which would be Edge Dancer. This one is at 4.27. A lot of people love the character that is featured in the story, which would be Lift. I don't love Lift. I find her super annoying. And that's basically it. I find her really annoying, and I'm shocked that so many people love her so much. I'm glad they do, but I just don't find anything she does funny. So many people think that she's funny, and I just don't. And the kind of humor that Sanderson does can be kind of hit or miss, because I think that he writes certain characters with very, very witty, clever humor, like the character Wit. And then there are characters like Lift that are like, I like pancakes. And I'm like, okay, is it pancakes or waffles? I can never remember. But either way, she's like, I gotta have all the different kinds of pancakes. And I can't relate, I guess, to... She's kind of flippant with everything. And even her power, which is basically to slide around everywhere. That's a very poor way of describing her power. But her power sort of reflects her personality. So those were some of my unpopular bookish opinions. Let me know what some of your unpopular bookish opinions are. What books are rated extremely high that you're like, really? Over? But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.